Well, good morning, everyone. Lovely to have you all here, those who are either in Zoom or those who are coming through YouTube and other places, or those who will watch us later. We are very excited this morning to have the famous and esteemed Bilal Kathrada, who is the CEO and founder of IT Varsity, among other things, and he is a vast amount of knowledge on various topics, and from everything from cloud computing through to mobile computing and much more. But today we're particularly excited because Bilal is going to come and speak to us on mobile app development and some of the issues around that and the possibilities around that. Obviously, it's a huge area and there are lots of opportunities and there are lots of challenges. And it's really important to try and understand this landscape as we move into a very exciting but rapidly developing future. So Bilal is going to be introducing us to some of the issues and ideas around mobile app development. So without any further delay from me, I'm going to hand over to Bilal to talk to us about mobile app development.
Thanks a lot, Craig. And for those of you, our regulars on YouTube, you must have been wondering what is going on here. You were expecting me, and then there's this other guy, Craig, that's talking. So just to give you guys, to bring you in the loop on what's happening here, today is actually a very special webinar because it's being dual streamed both to the UKZN, the University of KwaZulu-Natal, and to you guys on YouTube. So our students at UKZN will be attending and you guys will be attending. So IT Varsity and UKZN. And Craig is actually Professor Craig Blewett, and he's the lecturer of in the computer science faculty at UKZN. So this is something I do quite regularly. I do guest lectures at the UKZN on some of my experiences, and today we decided to bring everyone together, which is really, really great and really exciting. So Craig, thanks for that intro. I'm going to jump into it, but before I forget, Tala is with us again as always. He's my guy behind the scenes. Usually he takes a more prominent place in the webinar, but today he'll be put on the background on the tech side. He'll be reading your comments both on Zoom. So UKZN students, if you've got questions, please put them out. Tala will be fielding those questions. And IT Varsity students and our YouTube audience, you guys put your questions in the comments. Today is going to be a bit of an exciting conversation. It really goes in depth into the app world, and I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions. So let's make this exciting, guys. Ask me questions. You know, I love your questions more than my own presentations. I want this to be a conversation rather than a monologue. Otherwise, you could be just watching a non-live video, right? Why even bother? So, right, let's get started. So you can see that I've got a slide on the screen, and I'm basically sharing this slide, which I actually prepared for the UKZN. This is, I think, the third year in a row that I'm doing the same presentation. Okay. For those of you who don't know, other than IT Varsity, I also own the company called Xander Educational Apps, which, as the name suggests, it's educational apps for children, starting from early childhood development through primary school level. We are not traditional in a sense that you probably won't find our apps on the app stores. We generally tend to distribute our apps differently. We distribute via our partners like NGOs and government organizations. So for example, as of early this year, we launched a massive project with the Western Cape Education Department to roll out our apps to 200 schools, preloaded on tablets that were all sponsored by organizations like the Bretto Foundation. So it was a coming together of a number of organizations. Somebody sponsored the tablets. Our apps were preloaded, and those are being rolled out to 200 schools in the Western Cape region, which is incredible because we're going to be sort of reaching out to tens of thousands of children in those schools, and they're going to be educated using our apps. So they're being brought into the 21st century thanks to Xander's apps. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because today's conversation is about starting an app business, the strategies that you can use from a technical perspective, but also something from a business perspective on how to start an app business and what is the potential in South Africa and Africa for app businesses. Now, you might be thinking, well, every app that should have been developed has been developed. What new ideas are out there? And what can I possibly do in the app space? So I'm going to answer some of those questions. I'm also going to answer questions like, how do I get started? Where do I get started? What strategy do I use? What technologies do I need to learn? Should I get a developer to do it for me? Can I do it myself? So I'm going to answer all those questions. Those questions, those answers will be based on my experience with Zender educational apps, which began way back in 2012, quite accidentally. All right, let's get started. Mobile app development strategies. Development all the way through business. Now, typically when you're building an app, a serious app, you'd either build a native app, mobile web app, or what we call a hybrid app. Now, these are all the type of apps that you would actually code. And I'm not talking about no-code apps. Although no-code is great, like Microsoft Power Apps is a great platform for creating apps, but they haven't reached a level of maturity at this stage. The technology is not that mature that you can create standalone apps and deploy them to the app stores. So no-code or low-code is excluded from this conversation because you really can't create a commercial app using a no-code or low-code environment, as far as I'm concerned, at this stage. So your three options are native, mobile web app, and hybrid. Now, your native apps, first and foremost, what is a native app? A native app is an app that's written in the native language of the platform that you are creating the app for. Today, there are only two platforms left, right? All the others have gone extinct. So BlackBerry's operating system gone, Nokia's Symbian gone. So they are basically, sadly, unfortunately, only two contenders, Android and iOS. Android's native language is Java or Kotlin. Now, Kotlin is actually a superset of Java. So it's almost identical to Java with some convenience features added on for the Android platform. But at the heart of it, it's still Java. And iOS apps are written in Swift, in a language called Swift. Now, these are the languages that these OSs, these operating systems understand. It's their native language. Like a native of a country speaks his native language. So a native of France will speak French, a native of Turkey will speak Turkish. These are the native languages of these platforms. Okay, so that was native. What is a mobile web app? This is a fancy name for nothing more than a website. A website that is responsive, meaning it changes its configuration for different screen sizes, and in this case, particularly for tiny mobile screens. You know, in the old days, we used to create websites for computer screens, which were very big. But now you can create websites, which we call responsive websites, that basically adjust themselves depending on the size of the screen. And they can take on a completely different look depending on the screen size. So whether you are on a TV screen, like if you got one of those 65-inch 4K Full HD screens, or you got a iPad or a tiny Android phone, all of those are different screen sizes. And what looks good on a 4K screen will not necessarily look good on a tiny Android screen. So you have these responsive websites. Now, why do we call them mobile web apps? Why do we give them such a fancy name? It's simply because those apps, even though they run on a browser, now you have the capability of putting a little icon on the home screen of your of your device, of your phone, and you click on that and it opens up that website directly. So these naturally, like every other website on the planet, are written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's of course on the client side, right? If you're going to write server-side functionality, then you're going to write in a server-side language like Java or PHP or C# with the .NET framework. But that's a different subject. That's a different topic altogether. But by and large, your front end of your application will be written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, basically HTML5. Then you've got your hybrid apps. Now, your hybrid apps are neither native nor are they websites. What they are is actually a blend of the two. You get these website type apps written in HTML5, basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and they are wrapped up in what we call a wrapper application, which makes them almost in almost every way like a native app, in almost every way, not in every way. And typically you've got wrappers like PhoneGap. PhoneGap is going to be parked. It was parked. It was owned by Adobe, and they've parked it and they've released it actually to the open source space, and now it goes as Apache Cordova. So as you can tell, it's managed by Apache and licensed by Apache. So you can download it. It's an open source project, and you can use it for free. There are other frameworks that have come up in recent times, like React JS and Ionic also, well, React Native and Ionic. So you typically now you write this little application with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript with all the functionality that it has, and then you wrap it, and you can create an actual standalone app. Remember, with mobile web apps, the previous type of apps, you can't sell those. You can't deploy and sell them onto the app stores. That's a no-no, right? So monetization would be a strategy there that you'll have to consider. Selling your app on the app stores is not an option. You'll have to look at other monetization strategies, but we'll come back to that. So the hybrid apps, although they are written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because they are wrapped, and because you get an app package out of that, like in the Android space, you get an APK out of it, you can deploy these apps to your app stores and you can sell them there. So that makes things much easier. And the big advantage here is that these are written in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So there's no native language. There's HTML5, and then there's your wrapper, which also works as a translator. So basically, it works like this. If you go to France and you don't know a word of French, you can have a Frenchman who understands English and who speaks French be your translator. So that will be your go-between. Now, these wrappers like PhoneGap or Apache Cordova, actually, I need to update my slide actually to say Apache Cordova. These actually behave like translators between HTML5 and the operating system. So they take the HTML5 instructions and they translate it into native for the platform. Now, let me explain to you visually how these work so you'll understand it better. Take any device, whether it's a computer, a TV, an iPad, a tablet PC, a phone, all of them have at the very basis the hardware, right? Your processor. And on top of the processor, you have your operating system. The OS sits on top of the hardware. And then when you create a mobile app, the mobile app sits on top of that OS. It interacts directly with the operating system, which in turn is super optimized for the hardware of the device. So you can see there's no intermediaries here. Mobile web apps, on the other hand, operate quite differently. So you've got your operating system. On top of that, you've got an app, which is your browser. Your browser could be Safari, Chrome, Firefox, you name it. And on top of that sits your app. So can you see the difference now? in the previous example of native, your app sits directly on top of the operating system. No translator required, no intermediary required. But here, with mobile web apps, there is an intermediary, the browser. So your app that runs on the browser, that runs on the operating system, will only be as good and only be as efficient as your browser. So you have to consider, on one hand, your app's own efficiency, that meaning your code is written efficiently and written to operate smoothly on the device, but you don't have any control over the browser. So the browser could be eating up your device's resources. There could be maybe the user has 1,000 tabs open in the browser, and that's slowing down the device, which will naturally slow down your app. So it's not a very pleasant situation. You are entirely dependent on that browser. Not a very good situation. Okay, let's look at hybrid now, the third category. Just as with the others, you've got your OS, and then on top of the OS, you've got your framework like PhoneGap or Cordova. And on top of that, your app runs. So it runs on top of this platform. This is a highly simplified illustration, right? This is not exactly how it works, but this is a good way to conceptualize it visually. So what happens in this case is your app runs on top of this wrapper, and the wrapper runs on top of the OS. Okay, so I'm sure you got a question now. And your question is probably, what makes hybrid better than mobile web apps? Because both have an intermediary, right? Mobile web apps have the browser in the middle, and hybrid apps have the wrapper in the middle. Why are these better, or are they better? The answer is yes, they are better. For one simple reason, that your browser is not optimized to run apps. Your browser is a multi-purpose application. Remember that. The browser is not, it's not there to, it's not highly focused on just running your apps. So you can open up YouTube, you can open up Twitter, you can open up any website on the planet, and the browser is a multifunctional software that can run all of that. By their definition, they need to be able to run all types of content, not just your content. On the other hand, the wrapper like PhoneGap or React Native, they are highly optimized for one thing and one thing only, and that is to run HTML5 apps on top of your device and to take full advantage of the device's own internal capabilities. We know our devices have loads and loads of features like the camera, the myriad sensors, the navigation capabilities, GPS, all of that, the internal storage. So PhoneGap and Apache Cordova is designed to take full advantage of that and facilitate the smooth operation of your app on top of that OS. Okay, before I proceed, are there any questions, Tala?
Nothing at the moment.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So I've got a question for you guys, which is, which do you think is the best way to create an app? Which would be your preference? I don't think there's a good and a bad anymore. I think it's a matter of preference. What would be your preference? Okay, now let's go to the pros and cons, right? Now, when you look at a native app, it has certain advantages. Obviously, because your native app runs directly on the OS, it's highly optimized. So the advantages are that it's highly graphical. You can distribute on the App Store, and you got full device integration. Because I mean, if you are writing a Swift app for iOS, you're going to build on Apple's on Apple's own platform. You're going to write on Xcode, and they force you to optimize your app for your devices that you are writing for. So there's no chance of any major inefficiencies coming along. Disadvantage, and this is the biggest disadvantage of native apps, and this is the main reason why hybrid is so big. There's no portability. You create an app for iOS, you have to literally create that app from the ground up for Android. There's no parts of your app that is of your code that is reusable between the two platforms. It's a complete rehash. And in fact, it's not just about the code, it's about the entire platform and how they operate, how they work, how they deploy. They are completely different. So in essence, if you're going to go native, you're going to have to learn two complete different languages and two completely different frameworks, because the Android development framework, it's completely different from Xcode. They have different rules, different platforms for writing your code, different everything. So that's the biggest problem. Number two, platform instability. Now, this is not a common issue, but it happens now and again. So to give you an example, if you write an app, and this happens more with Android, a lot more with Android than with iOS, in my experience, is this: when a new version of Android comes out, there's a good strong chance your app will fail. And then you have to go in and update your app for the new version of Android before it will operate. It is painful to have to do that. So there's that. Then you've got development costs, because now you're building two different apps and in two different platforms. So it costs more. Even if you're developing it yourself, remember, your time is money, which takes us to development time. Then there's maintenance costs. Oh, my dear, you have to maintain two apps at the same time, obviously, if you are deploying to both platforms. And finally, you have limited control over the features of your app, especially the overall look and feel. So those are some big disadvantages. Let's skip mobile web apps, right? Because I don't personally see anybody running a business off a mobile web app, not at this stage. It's getting there. The tech is getting there. There are some changes, but let's jump to hybrid, because I don't want to run out of time. Hybrid apps. Hybrid apps, you write, as I said, in HTML5. Now, what's great is you can get a native look and feel. It's very difficult to distinguish a hybrid app from a native app these days. I mean, some of the biggest apps that we know, like Instagram and the Facebook app, are hybrids. They're not native apps. So it's quite impressive. You can distribute your hybrids on the app stores. You can get full device integration, and it's become ever more capable right now in these days. In fact, the manufacturers, Google and Apple, they are fully supportive of HTML5 now, which is great, much more so than when I started developing back in 2012. And of course, low development cost. Why? Lower development cost for two reasons. One is that you are writing one app that will run on both platforms, half the cost. And secondly, because HTML5 developers generally come in cheaper than native developers. Not a good advantage, but as a business person, you want to cut your costs where possible. Remember that. So there are more HTML5 developers out there, and they come in cheaper. Okay, some of the disadvantages. There is a slight limitation as far as graphics goes. Now, I'm not talking about your typical Instagram or TikTok or Facebook type app or informational type apps. I'm talking about really high-powered apps like 3D games. If you're going to build games like some of these first-person games, you might not want to go hybrid. You don't find many games that are written in High. Although that's changing. That's changing. Word Unity. That's changing quite a bit. I mean, as devices become more and more capable, these platforms are also, these frameworks are also getting more and more capable. So the difference between native and hybrid is gone much more blurred than it was back in the day. And then finally, I don't think this is a disadvantage. I don't know why I put this as a disadvantage. It requires familiarity with a mobile framework. It's kind of a disadvantage. So for example, you're going to need to learn Apache Cordova, or you're going to need to learn Ionic or React Native. And to learn React Native, you're going to need to learn React.js, and to learn React.js, you need to learn JavaScript. But look, learning is not a problem, because now you're going to create one app and run it on multiple different types of devices. Okay, so that is as far as the development side goes, right? Let's get into the business of it now. This is my favorite part. The business. Let's talk money. If you look at Africa, there's a 67% mobile application or mobile device penetration across Africa. Mobile is huge. In certain countries, there are more mobile devices than there are people, which means that people have more than one device. Devices have become cheaper than ever before, especially smartphones, and people are using them. Data has become cheaper. We are still on the high end here in South Africa, but in a lot of other African countries, data is cheap and people are using these devices. So mobile is the place to get into. But now, how do you build a successful app business? I'm going to give you 6 steps from my own personal experience, and I'm going to go through them a bit quickly. Tala, what is the South African time right now?
It's 11:27.
27. Okay, cool. Yeah. I had to ask you South African time because I didn't want you to give me Turkish time. Tala is in Turkey, guys. He's still around there. He's still roaming Turkey. I think he's in a city called Bursa now, which is about 2 hours from Istanbul. So just giving you guys a heads up there, our man in Turkey. Okay, so first and foremost, every app needs to solve a problem. You do not build an app for the sake of building an app. You build an app to solve a real problem. And when you do that, you are giving yourself exposure to an audience that has that problem. So if people have a problem, build that app to solve that problem, and you got yourself a market, and you can sell that app to those people. In my personal example, my app came about because I was tutoring maths to primary school kids. And I found that as much as they understood the concepts, they needed worksheets. They needed lots and lots of worksheets. And as you guys know, there's a limited number of worksheets in the textbooks. So after they had done those, there was no more practice. And teachers had to go and basically create worksheets for them. So I built an app that actually created worksheets, allowed the kids to complete the worksheets by putting in their answers, and then it would grade their work, it would mark their work and give them a grade, give them the percent. It was phenomenal. It was really, really phenomenal how the kids were enjoying it. The math results really improved. And the app took off very quickly. And then some friends recommended that I put it on, I submitted for the Vodacom App Star Award in 2012. And I was like, this is never going to win. But guess what? It won. It won the Vodacom App Star Award for the South African round. And it came 3rd in the international round. So you never know, right? Solve a problem. Another example besides my own app, which back in those days was called Arithmetic, but now it's part of the Zenda Educational Apps family. But another example, a good example, a South African homegrown example, is this company called Kula. You guys should check them out. This is a company that takes fresh produce from the small farmer straight to the customer. Now, in the old days, or even currently, the small farmers sell their produce to middlemen, warehouses, and those warehousing guys will then sell to the customers. And the customers would be who? supermarkets, restaurants, etc. The trouble is the small farmer was selling at a very low price to the middleman. And the middleman was putting a high markup and selling to the customers. And the small farmer was being disadvantaged. They were being trampled and they were getting the raw end of the deal, even though they were doing all the hard work. So what this app did was it solved that problem. They basically cut out the middleman. Now the customer is able to speak directly to the small farmer and order directly from them. How cool is that? South African homegrown company. Second tip, reinvent the wheel. Listen to me. Every app idea that you have, somebody's done it already, or somebody's written about it, or somebody's attempted it. You're never going to create something that nobody else has ever thought of. Remember that. What you need to do is reinvent the wheel better than anybody else. Do it differently. One good example of this is a Kenyan company called Sendi. Now, what did Sendi do? Sendi looked at the e-hailing model like Uber, and they took that model and they reinvented it for parcels. And they solved the problem. In cities like Nairobi in Kenya, it's extremely congested. And just going 2 streets away to deliver a parcel could take you a couple of hours. So Sendi solved that problem by having this app service. You pick up your device, you call up a Sendi, give them your parcel, punch in the destination, and off it goes. Saves you tons and tons of time. I wish there was something like that in South Africa, not just for food deliveries, but for parcel deliveries in general, because you have to jump in your car or take a taxi and go all the way to drop off a parcel. It's painful. So these guys didn't come up with anything new. They just took the same platform and they came up with a new idea based on top of that platform. Number 3, target your market. Don't build an app for everyone. Never do that. And this is a problem I find with a number of people that I mentor. And when I go for hackathons, get this bright spark here who is good at development, he can build apps, and I ask him a simple question: who is the target market of your app? Everyone in the whole world, all at once. Like the movie, what was it called? Everywhere, I forgot. But anyways, you can't do that. You just can't do that because you don't have the marketing power and the branding power to reach the whole world. You have to start with a niche audience and grow your business with that niche and then expand your business from there, going outwards. Let me give you an example. Remember this one? This was the first iteration of the Facebook page. Now you can say, well, Facebook has over 1 billion users, etc. But Facebook didn't start off with that. Mark Zuckerberg didn't think he's going to build an app for everybody. He built an app for college students in his dorm room. So while in his dorm room, he built this app called The Facebook. As you can see, subsequently it was changed to Facebook and then to Meta. He built this for university students, and specifically for male students who wanted to meet women, right? Who wanted to meet girls, and they were shy. So they would put their profiles onto this website and hope that some girls would see it. I don't know what was the success rate on that, but I do know that the success rate as far as the business goes was great. This app was picked up by students and at his university, I think it was Harvard, and by universities around the USA. And within a few months, they were reaching a couple of million subscribers. So he had a very specific target. Now, once he had exploited that market completely, then he started expanding into other markets. Remember that. Number 4, go to market yesterday. What does this mean? It means stop thinking too much, stop overthinking this, and try and get your app out there as quickly as possible. I know so many developers that sat and mulled over their app ideas for months and months, if not years, thinking about how am I going to make this even more perfect? How am I going to make this even better? Dude, guys, people, ladies, gentlemen, don't fool yourself. Get your app out there as quickly as possible, or somebody is going to wipe you out. Somebody's going to jump on that idea and steal it from you and go and make millions. Take Instagram, for example. From inception of that idea, listen to me, from inception of the idea to the first 1 million subscribers happened in under 3 months. From inception of the idea, let's build an app for smartphone photography enthusiasts to share their work. That was the inception, right? All the way through first 1 million. They say 2.5 months, but I think it was closer to 3 months. So see how quickly they went from A to Z? Very, very quickly. So that's a lesson we need to learn. Number 5. This is the one question that I stump every single person that's ever pitched to me an app idea. And a simple question, how are you going to make money from this? And they all just fall apart. You see them standing in front of the judges and slowly melting into the ground, and they're gone because they can't answer the damn question. If you want me to invest in your app, tell me how you're going to make money. I want to know how you're going to make money out of this app and how I'm going to get returns on investment. Don't tell me you're going to make an application to government and blah, blah, blah. I'm not interested in that. I want to know how you're going to make money. What is the business model of your app? What is the market size of your app? If you can answer me that in one sentence, in 30 seconds or less, then you got my confidence, right? But I'll talk about monetization strategies shortly. If you can't answer that question, then you're not building an app to make money. You're building an app just to do service to the community or something. Start an NGO, but even NGOs need money, right? So you're probably wasting your time. You're just an amateur enthusiast until you have a business model. Then you're a business person. Remember that. I know it's harsh, but I'd rather be upfront with you and not sugarcoat this, because too many people make that mistake. Okay, how do you make money on an app? The one is paid apps. You go to the app store, you buy the app. Simple as that. The other one is freemium. Freemium is where you release the app for free, but for a limited time or with limited functionality. And if people want to buy the full app, if they want the full, or after the trial period is ended, if they want the app, then they're going to have to pay for it. Or if they want the full functionality, they're going to have to pay for that and get the full functionality, full capabilities of that app. Third model business model for an app is in-app purchases. In-app purchases is similar to freemium, except with in-app purchases, you don't have to get all or nothing. You can buy certain things within that app, certain capabilities within that app. And it's a great model for video games, especially, where people can buy level ups and they can buy powers and they can buy tools and weapons, right, using in-app purchases. Or in a productivity app, they can buy certain features that they need and exclude certain features that they don't need. In fact, we had a discussion this morning with my team about an app that has so many other features, but you have to buy them separately and sort of put them together like a Lego and present that. You're not buying this completely massive, bloated system that's got hundreds and hundreds of plugins. You're just buying the plugins that you need and you're putting them together. So that's in-app purchases. And finally, there's the advertising model. Basically, we've all seen them, those annoying adverts between the stages of your game, and you're just like eager to get to the next stage. Then you have to sit and watch a 2-minute advert. And then you know how it goes. Okay, I for one, I can't stand those. I just buy the damn app. Okay, finally, DIY IP. Actually, I shouldn't put that IP. I should just leave it as DIY. DIY, do it yourself. The IP stands for if possible. But I think if you are committed enough, then you will make it possible. That's what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs are problem solvers. They are people who make things happen. So DIY, do it yourself. Don't take your app idea and listen to your uncle and send it to be developed in India because it's cheaper there and quicker. Number of people I know who wasted hundreds of thousands of rands, if not millions of rands, doing that. If they'd only given me all that money, I would have taken the money and run away. You know, I mean, fool and his money are soon parted. I'm not saying they're fools. Okay, that's bad. I'm not saying they're fools. They thought they were doing the right thing by outsourcing overseas. But it always comes back to the same thing. The developers disappear, or they become suddenly unavailable, and these guys are stuck with a semi-completed app, or worse still, an app that started out as one thing and ended up as something else, and they don't know what to do. And they contacted me to say, well, you know, this guy from India half built this app. Can you please complete it for me? Hell no, I'm not going to touch that, because these guys tend to write spaghetti code. That's what we call the code that they write, spaghetti, because it's like spaghetti. Trying to understand that code is like trying to unravel strands of spaghetti. It's almost impossible. So the only thing I say to these people is, unfortunately, sadly, you're going to have to rebuild this app from the ground up. That's the only way I will touch this. And I will quote you South African prices, not fly-by-night prices. Don't ever outsource. Remember, your app is like a beautiful piece of art. It's your Mona Lisa. And it's in its perfection and its flaws, it talks about you as a business person. It talks about what's special about your business. There's no way on earth that you can translate that to an outside developer, particularly a foreign developer. What that guy is going to do is he's going to take your requirements and he's going to interpret it in his own mind and give you what his interpretation will be, which is the shortest, cheapest, easiest, quickest way to develop this thing. He's not interested in adding that finishing touch. He's not interested in putting that cherry on the top, in impressing your audience, impressing your users. He's only interested in taking your money and developing something for you as quickly as possible. So what would you prefer your app to be? A beautiful work of art like the Mona Lisa, which you created under your own supervision, with your own hands, with love and care, with all its faults. I mean, my app that won the App Star Award, man, oh man, it was so broken. It was hacked together. It was held together with bubblegum and sticky tape, in a manner of speaking. But it was my app. It was a thing of beauty. Versus one generic looking cheap photograph that you put on the wall. You don't want that. So don't outsource your app ever. If you want to make an app, learn it yourself. Learn app development yourself. And if you want to learn app development, go to iDvarsity, the best place to learn app development. I had to plug. Sorry about that, Craig, but I'm an entrepreneur. I plug my products wherever I can. But seriously, we do teach app development, quite good. Okay, before we get there, I've got some case studies, but before that, Tala, do we still have time?
We are actually 14 minutes over time.
Okay. Okay, let's try and wrap up quickly. But in the meantime, are there any questions, any comments? UKZN students, I see there's some questions.
Yeah, I saw one that I was just actually, a student had mentioned earlier about, you were talking about which was the preferred option to get kicked off with learning or using to develop. And the student had said, no, it'd probably go for mobile web app. And obviously the student said that would probably make more sense to them. And because they don't understand it. What sort of level of overhead is involved if you going to go for something that's, you know, a hybrid that's got the wrapper around it? I mean, is it a significant, because obviously your hardest is going to be if you're going native, you're going to have to understand all that. A lot of the students and people, as you said, already understand HTML5 and CSS and all of that environment, and it's going to be comfortable. And from what you said, I understand the advantages and the disadvantages, but you can't obviously really deploy it anywhere unless they go with maybe your model where, you sell it preloaded on tablets or whatever, but that's a little bit more difficult to do. So what's the jump to then say, okay, well, let's go and try and create this more hybrid type app? How much more difficult is that?
It depends. It's a smallish jump or a slightly less small jump, right? It's not significant. It's not like a completely new learning. It's just basically an add-on to your current learning. I mean, you're still going to build in HTML5, but you simply have to learn the wrapping technology. Now, in the case of Apache Cordova, the jump is the smallest because you're basically plugging a raw HTML5 app, for lack of a better word, into Cordova, and you're deploying it. But with React Native, for example, you first have to make that jump from JavaScript to React. You have to learn the React library. And I'm deliberately using the word library here, not framework, because React is not a framework. It's a library. A framework is a lot more comprehensive. It's a very comprehensive structure. We'll come to that. So you have to learn the React library and become fairly proficient with that, and then do the jump to React Native, which you can deploy.
So what would be, I mean, if Cordova is so much easier, why would anyone, I mean, surely that would be possibly the way to go. Why would someone want to go with the React route, which sounds like it's a lot more complex?
That's true. It's a lot more complex, but you're getting a lot more efficiency because React is a lot more optimized for mobile applications, and the way that they force you to code JavaScript is really incredible. So if you want a much higher level of efficiency, plus also React comes with some native libraries to get that native look and feel in your apps. So although it's kind of a trade-off, right? Although there's a learning curve, but in the long run, it makes it much easier for you. Okay. You're getting that. With Cordova, you have to. It's not much of a jump, but you have to do a lot of the work yourself in the long run. So my personal choice would be React over Cordova. And then you've got Ionic. Now, Ionic also incredible framework. In fact, my arithmetic app was written in one of the early versions of Ionic. Ionic is built on Angular. Now, Angular is a JavaScript framework. It's not a library. And a framework, as I said, is a very big, very comprehensive system for creating JavaScript applications. So with Ionic, there's a much bigger jump. And I think Ionic was starting to lose customers because of that jump. So they started to incorporate React also. So now you can write in React and sort of incorporate Ionic and deploy in Ionic. Either ways, remember there's a trade-off. With just Apache Cordova, less learning curve, but more work in the long run. With the frameworks and libraries, learning curve, and it's not a very steep learning curve. If you know JavaScript well, to go from JavaScript to React is not hard. It's not hard at all. Any JS developer will be able to make that jump. Fairly straightforward.
So when you say things like Cordova have more work in the long run, what is that work around that should be more work in the long run?
I didn't understand your question. You mean what?
You said Cordova requires more work and it's a smaller jump and more work in the long run. Why would there be more work in the long run? What sort of things are you now having to do in the long run that you wouldn't have to in one of the others?
Okay, a number of things. One very apparent thing is in creating your user interfaces, right? With Cordova, remember you're writing pure JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So you're basically building your user interfaces from the ground up. Everything from the responsive capabilities of your pages down to very, very minute things like the look and feel of every single button, every single user input. All of that you are creating yourself. Obviously, you can import different CSS libraries and things, but at the basis, you are doing all the work yourself. With a library like React Native, they're giving you all that for free. From the time you create that app with a few lines, with a few command prompt lines, it gives you the complete look and feel framework, the visual framework of your app out of the box. Very little for you to do. And as you want to add elements, it's nothing more than just adding a few lines of code here and there. And you got yourself a button, or you got yourself a slider, or a text entry box. And then there's the concept of binding, right? Binding the user interface elements to functionality on the back end. So basically, if I press this button, what happens? What are the set of features that kick in from this point, or functionality that kicks in? That's called binding. With React, it's a lot easier, and there's a much clearer binding between your visual elements and the back-end code. And then finally, very importantly, is communication with the server with a remote API. Remember, hardly any app ever operates in isolation. Today, pretty much every app needs connectivity, and they need connectivity unless it's a simple game that you're running on your device, right? But any productivity app, for example, needs connectivity because it needs to talk to a remote, one or more remote APIs. And the frameworks and libraries make it much easier. Remember, API communication is very challenging, even for experienced developers, because things go wrong all the time. So you could use, for example, with JavaScript, recently, well, as recent as the last few years, you've got the Fetch API, which is probably the best way now if you're using pure JavaScript to speak to an API. But it's tricky. It's very tricky, and it's error prone. Or you could use something like, you could use jQuery, but then again, now you're bringing in a library. See, you're going for a library. But with native and with Angular, they make it much easier. It's so simple. And also it's easy to diagnose any problems. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, thanks, Bilal. Great.
All right, so what I suggest is perhaps let's leave it at that. I don't want to get into the case. I don't want to rush through these case studies. They are really good. Perhaps we'll schedule a follow-up to this if possible, and we'll discuss these case studies. I will just show you this. I wanted to give you walk you guys through the basically the genesis of these companies, where they started off, what were the intermediate steps that happened, and how they got to where they are. And these are all African companies, by the way. And I think it's very inspirational for you guys, being Africans, to know that there are so many potential options in Africa still. So Kula is one of them. Naked Insurance, this has got nothing to do with nudity, by the way. It's just the name of the company. Sweep South, Arid, Lifebank, and yeah, that was that. So as usual, please get in touch with me. I like having more and more friends. If you've got any questions, you can put them on YouTube. UKZN students, even after this this lecture is over, the video is available on IT Varsity's YouTube channel. You can go and find it there, as well as all our previous webinar videos. So you guys can get access to all that. And if you have any comments, you can put it on YouTube, or you can ask me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and oh, where's my TikTok? This slide is a bit outdated. I'm on TikTok also. Look for Bilal Kads and you'll find me on TikTok. So yeah, that's it. With those few words, I thank you very much. And I will take any last comments and questions before we close off. Tala, anything happening on the YouTube side?
We did have some questions and comments, but your answers to Craig answered them perfectly. They were also about mobile app development and moving towards hybrid from there.
Okay, lovely stuff. IT Varsity is a big believer of in hybrid. That's why we don't teach native. We only teach hybrid because 11 years ago, I saw the potential of it. At that stage, it was still very in its infancy, but now it's really come of age. And for you guys who are curious, trust me, try out native, you will love it. But first learn JavaScript. and then go into native, you will absolutely love it. Although people will say, you don't need to learn JavaScript to learn native. Nonsense. I'm a software engineer. I've been doing this for 30 years. Learn JavaScript. It's not that hard. And then jump to native. Give it a try. You will love it. I absolutely love native. Native, by the not native, sorry. Why am I saying React, React.js and React Native. Those are, it's a lovely JavaScript library. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It's actually owned by Facebook. They developed this library for their own apps, the Facebook and Instagram apps. I'm not sure what's happening with WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp uses some other tech, but it's also a Meta. It's also owned by the same company. But React, incredible. Go and learn React. Cool. Thanks a lot, guys.
Well, thanks, Bilal. Thank you very much on behalf of UKZN and students and giving us the time. And yeah, thank you very much. And we hope to see you again. Cheers, everyone.
A pleasure as always. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.